everyone, this is Paul Casey. Welcome to the Kenpo Karate Hall of Fame educational video series where we discuss Kenpo principles, concepts, and techniques and forms and all kinds of aspects of discussion to help further Kenpo Karate. We're honored today to have a lot of special guests, so I will start at the top and move across. Please welcome Senior Master of the Arts, Mr. Richard Planas. Master of the Arts, Conatser. Senior Master of the Arts, Mr. Bob White. Jason Farnsworth. Grandmaster Chuck Sullivan. It's good to see you. Lori Hyde, thank you so much for being here representing. And then all our friends from Sweden, Kim, Johnny, and Manny. Welcome. Thank you so much for staying up late and to help us with this. We're going to discuss, this is part 4 of the Art of Forms Kenpo style. In the past, we've discussed the first 4 forms, the dictionary of Kenpo, and now we're moving over to the encyclopedia. And with that in mind, we're going to be discussing form 3, okay? So quickly, I am going to ask Mr. Conatser to define for us the encyclopedia of Kenpo. Why is this form in that category?
The first 4 forms we consider the dictionaries, which are defining basic movements, as Mr. Parker said, and then the short 3 and beyond are considered the encyclopedias, which give more in-depth information, than just defining movements. So now you're putting combinations of movements together, and actually they're the first technique forms going throughout. So the 3s happen to be the main. Each one of these forms has a particular a topic, and 3s are of course on grab attacks. So we're going to the web of knowledge and doing grabs and hugs and holds in there. So those are what we're doing with the 3s, a short 3 now.
You know, I was talking once way back with Mr. Parker. He was trying to explain the different types of attacks. There are the dead attacks, semi-live, and live. So this form incorporates mostly dead attacks, grabs, chokes, and then a semi-live could be possibly a potential grab or a potential attack, the forms and techniques that are used in it. With that in mind, going over to Chuck Sullivan. Chuck, in the early days of Kenpo, when these forms were being created, and you got to form 3, can you tell us a little bit about the background of where this form came from, how it was devised, the best of your knowledge?
You know, I really can't, because it was there when I started in 1959. We had forms 1, 2, and 3, and that was they weren't long or short, obviously, just 1, 2, and 3. And so how it was developed was before my time, before 1959, as far as I know. I mean, because it was already there. So it was my favorite form. I loved short form 3. This was before there were tournaments. This was before there was any kind of competition in forms or anything for that matter. The only freestyle competition we had was in the dojo, and we had nothing in the way of forms. That all came much later. So it was just something we learned. We did because it was part of the curriculum. It was part of what Head Parker was teaching, and that's about all I can tell you about it.
Well, when you learned the form, you just walked in and one day you said, "I'm going to teach you this form," or
yeah, basically that was it. Yeah, here we go. We're learning, and then we realized that we had already learned some of the techniques. Well, basically all the techniques in the form. This was just, I asked Ed one day, why we do forms, and he said it's a good exercise in memorization. If you try to just list them or whatever, you might miss something, or once it's in a form, you just do the form and you get practice doing all the techniques within that form.
I see. On the Hall of Fame page, you were gracious enough to present us with the video of you doing form 3 short. Oh, well, we know it is short 3 today. And you did that very quickly in the last bit of a filming. It was very interesting. I've seen some of our seniors do this form, and Mr. White does it very well, and it's one of the forms that he likes to present. Mr. White, when you teach short 3, what's the most common things that you deal with when you're instructing a student?
Well, we've tried to lay the groundwork, as Dennis mentioned. They're made up of techniques. So in many cases, it's one of the easiest forms to teach. All you have to do is put them in a determined sequence, but they've already done the self-defense techniques most of the time, very often with partners, so they know them very well. And it's easy for them to tell a great story in doing short 3 because of the familiarity. We always talk about, even when an orange belt is learning circling wing, or locked wing, or some of their striking serpent's head, that we're laying the groundwork for their further education as they put those together in the form. We consider short 3 the first advanced form. As Dennis mentioned, we've already gone through all the way up through long 2. And at that point, we start to allow our people to start developing their own style, put their key eyes in when they choose to. Earlier, below that, long 2 and all the way down to short form 1, all their key eyes are predetermined for them at our school. But when they get to short 3, then they get a little bit of self-expression, and they can insert the key eyes when they feel is appropriate. So it's actually my favorite form. I think it really serves a great message in being a tool for our students to use. I mentioned in one of the other episodes how we have the 3 stages of our training. We have memorization, visualization, and actualization. And I think short 3 gives them the best opportunity to practice all 3 methods.
In Mr. Parker's book, Infinite Insights, he divides Kenpo into 3 divisions. Obviously, basics, self-defense techniques, and freestyle or fighting sparring. This actually fits in. It's interesting because it crosses over a little bit. I had a conversation with one of the seniors on this. If you're training by yourself, you can still spar with no contact by yourself, and that would use the idea of a form as to help you. Then if you get with somebody else and there's no contact, you can have 2 people, then you have light contact, medium, full, and then street. But it's essential to reinforce the techniques and your basics with your forms, which is so essential. We've heard this numerous times from many of our seniors. I can just relate to the last forms comp discussion we had with Mr. Planas. It just seems that there's a lot of violations there. What's the biggest problem you find, Mr. White, when you're teaching a student on correct body mechanics and basics in their stances? I mean, how do you reinforce that so that they're not poking a guy that's 6'5" or kicking a guy that's 5'6" and they're, say, 6 feet tall? How do you prevent that?
Well,
how do you help
if
them?
that happens, then what they're not doing is they're not visualizing where the attacker is coming from and what he's coming at them with. So there is really no visualization. And I think the biggest enemy, I personally feel, is speed. People just trying to go too fast, and they're not doing it in a realistic manner. So it becomes like you need a stopwatch at the beginning, and their success or failure is determined by the quickness in which they did the form. And I personally don't like that. As I've always enjoyed Richard Planas' forms. He's very deliberate in his stance transitions, and you get a feeling that he could make the form work. And it's real. It's not really a race. So that's my biggest obstacle.
I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry, sir. Go ahead.
No, just that, Paul. I think the fact that people try to go too fast. I mentioned before, I think a lot of people do their forms like they spend all morning at Starbucks and they've had so many cups of coffee that they're in a hurry and they end up slurring. And Dan Inosanto had a great saying recently about one of the major mistakes in Kenpo or martial artists is that they will hide their inadequacies by trying to go too fast. So I like to see deliberate stance transition with speed, power, and accuracy being implemented in the forms. If you go fast, your hands are faster than your body. And if you're trying to go too fast, you stop acting as a team and you divide your energy sources. And what happens? You end up diluting the purpose of the form and the quality of the form.
You know, we had that, by the way, talking about Starbucks in the morning, don't do that. Train in the afternoon and have scotch. It'll help you.
Yeah.
Okay. You know, our conversation, we had the same thing last week. And I asked Mr. Planas about this, and I'm going to go to him in 1 minute, about the fact that we have this stop and start motion in most of these forms. I think it has to attribute to competition. He stressed the continuity of the form is a continuous motion. And you can tell when somebody is trying to use speed because they start at one speed, and as they get toward the end of the form, they're dropping off real fast with their breathing and their strikes, and their stances start to diminish. So, Mr. Planas, how do we address that to not make that mistake?
What mistake?
Of speed.
Just make yourself slow down. I ask people that all the time. I say, what is the Tai Chi? What is the simplest definition of Tai Chi you can give? Just Kung Fu done in slow motion. Why do they do it in slow motion? So they can pay attention to their timing, their posture, their mechanics, you know, and see where they're at. You can see that when you're off by going super slow. Like I said in one of the last sessions, I've got an article I cut out of a gun magazine about shooting. And it's talking about the value of practicing in slow motion. You'll find your flaws and things much faster and easier and understand it better when you do it slow. It's amazing to me that Tai Chi is the only system that does that. Other schools I walk into, the instructors are yelling, faster, faster, faster. And I say, no, slower, slower, slower. You know, the repetition and slow and understanding, you know, what you're doing is, you know, where it's going to come from.
You know, it's funny.
You know, just
there's an old saying I've heard. If I've heard Mr. Planas say this once, I must have heard him say it 500 times. Are you touching him or are you hitting him? And if you're sitting there just going, brrr, I don't think you're hitting him. I might be wrong, but I'm going to defer to Mr. Planas on that one. Lori,
I'm with you.
Miss Lori, hello, welcome to the Kenpo Karate Hall of Fame Educational Video Series. Your thoughts on forms? You perform, you execute. What do you look for when you're training in the Kenpo forms?
Well, I think right now, with COVID being the issue we have going on right now in the schools, especially here in Canada, we're pretty shut down. They're limiting us a lot. It is the time to train our basics, our stances, because there's not we can't make any contact with each other right now. And as we work on these forms, I'm really watching some of the students completely change their dynamics. I'm watching their imaginations build. And it's really neat to watch, knowing that you can't make any contact right now. So the forms are where it's all at right now, I think. That's my favorite part to train right now.
How do you feel about Form 3?
It is one of my favorite forms. I find it the most interesting to teach because it is based on techniques, and it's not just you're going in this direction towards this, you know, like you're turning, you're making different moves than you have in the previous forms. And I think that it provides a eye-opening experience for the students to start to see new things.
Is there a favorite technique out of that form?
I think crossing talent is probably my favorite technique out of that form.
Okay. I was having this conversation with Mr. Conatser. Honestly, out of all the titles, Wings of Silk just jumps out at me. I don't know why, but I think I just love that title because it's like it's a beautiful expression. And I can just literally see in Mr. Parker trying to be wings of silk, and I'm seeing a lot of damage to somebody else. Hey, let's go over to Jason Farnsworth. Jason, welcome. How are you, sir?
Yes, not too bad. Yourself, sir.
Good, good. Thank you for coming on today. As a student of Mr. Planas and of American Kenpo, tell us your thoughts about Form 3.
I really enjoy it. It's one of my top 2 favorite forms to do. So when I go about teaching it, I go about doing kind of like what Mr. White was saying. I just can't go too fast with the form itself. It's solidifying the base. And if you can't have a base, you just can't go through the form properly. I love doing the form and love teaching the form as well. Lots of great things in there. Lots of great transitions, movements, strong, powerful. Everything is well laid out there in the form.
I see. Yeah, it was actually one of the first forms I ever learned, actually. I learned 1 and then they just jump right to 3. And I could use it because it was so dynamic for on a stage performance. Mr. Planas, in the order of the techniques that are done in Form 3, short 3, we're staying with short 3. Do you have any background or knowledge in all the years training with Mr. Parker or teaching? Why were these techniques chosen and why were they placed in this order?
Well, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to see that if you just use your brain and analyze.
Okay.
Don't let me get sidetracked here. I'm gonna jump back a little bit. The 1s and 2s are what we call the basics forms. 3 up are the technique forms. 3 is grabs. 4 is kicks and punches. We say in realistic and non-realistic combinations for category completion. That's the end of normal everyday self-defense. 5 and 6 are specialty forms. 5 is study of takedowns, and 6 is weapons. Save for last because your life's on the line. You got to be damn good to take on a weapon and come out on top. So 3 is your grabs, 4 is your kicks and punches. Why is 3 the grab form or the first technique form? It's very, very simple. People say dead attack. No, I never use that term, and I don't ever remember actually hearing it. Nothing dead can attack you. It has to get there and grab you very much alive. And then you better be glad it wasn't a punch because it would have taken your teeth out if you waited to see if it was a grab. So that's not the reason for that. It's grabs for another reason. Grabs give you the most read time or decision time. What am I going to do about this? You better hurry up because number 2 or number 3 is going to be the punch following up. The guy doesn't grab you, and stick his finger in his nose. He grabs you because he's going to punch you. See, so he grabs 1 and punches 2, or grabs 1, cocks 2, and then punches. And that's what you'd hope he did, is give you 3 beats of read time. That's the most decision time you're going to get. After that, 4, 5, and 6 are all realistic at 1 beat of read time. Here comes a punch, here comes a kick, whatever. What am I going to do about it? So that's why grabs come first, the most decision or read time. And then there's so many categories of motion you want to look at. Like we talked about 1, short 1, base and block, front hand block. Long 1, base and block, front hand block, rear hand counter with the forward row. Short 2, moving forward. Forwards and backwards is also part of category completion. So let me move forward, but remember I said this last time. Every time you go through the order of in, out, up, down, you have to do something you have never done before. So you block with the front hand, which you did before. You countered with the rear hand. Now let's counter with the front hand. You went from a block to a punch in long 1, a closed fist, fully closed fist. Now you go to a fully open hand with a chop. You go from closed to open. And then you go half of that, half fist, you go 1 knuckle first, then the half fist, and you close the hand in order. It's all categorized motion. So, and also when you did 2, short 2, you did one of the themes or categories is compounding. 1 stance change like long 1, 1 block, neutral, forward bow, 1 strike. So you have now neutral to forward, but 2 strikes in a compound. A staggered, bop, block, chop heel palm or chop poke, whatever. And that's in front of you, which is the shortest travel in timing and range. Then the next move goes to the side of you with outward block, and punch. See, so that takes the travel and changes the timing a little bit more to give you the block and punch. That's a compound to the side. And then you go in the rear, upward block with the, we say when I teach that, I always talk about the torque and backup mass as your power principles there. And then the second move, here comes a train.
You use a musical relationship with, it's like an and one and two motion, which in music, if you go one,
Yeah.
you
I
have a
don't want to lose my train of thought here, Paul, so let me keep talking here.
Go ahead.
Everybody that still teaches or does the B1A series, it's exactly for that reason. B1A is in place, just forward bow, grab, hook, and pull and punch. Then you say, okay, now let's get real about this. Let's increase the range. So now I got to shuffle. Let's increase the range a little more. Now I got a crossover. Then, understand? So you're just adding time to the same base move. So you're working as a synchronized unit. When your hands stop, your foot stop. So when that happens, that comes into play. So all these time changes, and that's why it's laid out on the clock principle. What's the clock for? Telling time. It takes you longer to get from one number to, like, from 12 o'clock to 3 is 15 seconds or minute. From 12 to 6 is 30. And then to 45 or 9 is 45. So you're just making yourself delay. See? So anyway, back when you're doing that, you went from in front of you to beside you. Upwards doesn't apply because the upward block is the only block that does not use a power principle. It's based on angle of deflection. So you can do basically anything as long as you have that roof over your house and build that angle of deflection. And that's why the power principles of torque, backup mass, and measure of gravity generally don't apply to the upward block. And there's a few other things it doesn't apply to. But anyway, when you did that, and you go into 3, and I said, now let's change the timing. The man was in front of us, then he was beside us. Now let's make him behind us. So the techniques in the beginning are all behind you, just to delay your timing. So the timing of crashing wings is exactly left-handed 5 swords, but you have to turn around to do it. And that's where you pick up your last and new stance. In the 1s and 2s is neutral and forward. Then now you're picking up the reverse. Now I've asked this before in the last sessions, what are the main stances in Kenpo? Neutral, forward, and reverse. Why do we call them the main stances? Because stances we strike from. See, so when you first learn or get introduced in the forms, you've already learned it in basics class, but in forms, when you go the reverse bow, you don't strike from it. You just put it in position to give him something to trip over when you do crashing wings. So you still have your neutral forward with your front hand and rear hand. See, but again, he's behind you. Now look at the mechanics of crashing wings. And then there's one between that, while I'm thinking about it, is twirling wings. That is behind you also, and that is a horizontal compound. That's a horizontal compound with the outside the arm instead of inside. There's a much more I could talk about and bring into this stuff, but I'm not going to give it all away, on this thing. I'm just getting the ball rolling with people's brains, So then now you did that, and then your next move is circling wing. Circling wing is the opposite side, or the true mechanics of 5 swords. But again, you have to turn around and do it behind you and make you that delay. So it's crashing wings, twirling wings, circling wing, and there's one in the middle, but just look at crashing wing. That's what I make my students do. I say, circling wing, crashing wing, circling wing, crashing, and just forwards and backwards. Forward, neutral, reverse, forward, neutral, reverse, and working in that play. Then the second half of the form comes reverse, neutral, forward, and flip-flop to stances. And again, I'm getting, on a tangent here, but that's why the techniques, you ask why the techniques were picked, that's why, because they do that.
Okay. Let's go over to Kim, Johnny, and Manny over in across the water. How you doing, guys? You still awake?
Barely.
Oh, yeah. Really? Okay. What are your thoughts on what Mr. Planas just said? I know you were tested on it today, so it should be fresh.
Go, Manny. He said it all. He said test.
Help us out. Help us out with it. Your thoughts on short 3.
Our thought in short 3 is that, it's a great form due to its technique and it's, 2 left-sided and so on. There's a lot of different reasons why it's put together, I can hear, and some interesting things we're talking about. So yeah, we liked it.
Moving down to Mika. Hello, Mika. How are you? Are you here?
Hi, how's it going?
It is good. It's good to have you here. Now we have two ladies on board, you and Lori. Yay. We're talking about short three.
Okay,
Tell us
cool.
what you like about short three. Tell us what you don't like about short three.
I like short three because it's the introductory stages to the angles, and I like how it kind of flows in the beginning, and then you transition into a cat stance to offset towards 3 o'clock, and then 1:30.
Okay. Mr. Sullivan, your thoughts of what you've been hearing?
Okay, I unmuted you. I unmuted me. It's a fun technique. I mean, it's a fun form. That's all. It's just it's fun to do. It's fun to do the techniques themselves, and it's a good time.
In your training in which you teach, what have you taken away from short three that you use in your system?
Not much. Our techniques are different, and we don't. I teach short three because it's like old school Kenpo to me. I think there are certain, you know, our syllabus is not like the regular syllabus, so it's one of those, like, to me, like traditional forms. That the 2-man set and the staff set are the ones that I've hung on to from old school Kenpo. Otherwise, we just do our master form, which is all of our techniques done in a row, all 55 of them, 60 now because we've actually included yellow belts.
Let me ask you this: you use a lot of headbutts. We do find in short three, but limited. Why is that, Mr. Planas? Why don't we use more headbutts?
Why don't we use more headbutts?
Oh, yeah, because it pops up occasionally in short three from a rear grab. Sometimes it can be used for the front.
Well, a lot of people don't even know that. You know, like I talk about that all the time. Like when you're doing three and you're doing fatal cross, when you come in and you center punch somebody, not just fatal cross, but a lot of techniques. When you center punch somebody, they're going to have a realistic reaction, and that's bend over like a rocket. And most people want to look at the guy they're hitting, and they get their nose busted with a headbutt, you know, because they're looking at the guy. I says, you know, yeah, what's wrong with you? Don't you realize the guy's going to bend over like that? So you tuck your head, you know, so he busts his nose on your head and you don't headbutt, see? So, but before that, a previous is in scraping hoof, when you use the headbutt to the rear. So
Right.
You use the headbutt to the rear, then you go forward and you cover yourself with the headbutt and make him bust his head, so you understand that. You know, in Europe, Ireland, Scotland, a lot of places, they fight. Headbutt is very, very big. They call it the Glasgow kiss. You know, give him a Glasgow kiss. I don't know why they say that in Ireland, but that's the name of it, you know, which is a headbutt. But everybody, you see it in movies, you see it all kinds of things. You can knock somebody silly and knock them cold with a headbutt because there's no telegraphing and whatever, just fast, but you got to be in range, but most of the time people are. You know, they let you in that range, and you're going to get hit yourself if you don't hit him first. You know, that's why we always talk about that 2 steps of read time. You're learning to read because the bad guy gets the first move. It's like the Western movies, you know, the bad guy gets the draw first, and the good guy always beats him to the draw, and they've proven that it can never happen. You know, they figure out the draws first nowadays. They do it so fast, they actually can draw and fire faster than the gun will work, and no reaction can match that. So there's only one principle Mr. Parker used to talk about: to beat action to reaction, that's increase your opponent's travel. So make him stay 2 steps away, where if he could hit you without moving, or one fast step and he hit you, he's too close. So that's why we say let's work at 2 steps of read time. And then when I have students do that, they can do their techniques much better because they get a better read and they see the body mechanics to go along with it, because that's what you're doing. Most schools teach you how to listen. They get you on the mat and call off techniques all day long, and they can rip them off like gangbusters. To see some spontaneous, put somebody out there, just throw some stuff at them. They don't know what's coming. They fall apart. And that's the real world, the read world, not the listen world. Nobody's going to tell you what I'm coming in with, tell you what to do. You got to read it and figure out and put something together to handle it.
It's funny, Frank held you in high regard, and I see a lot of times I see you and Frank sometimes in your videos, how you're actually in that fighting stance with that chin slightly dropped down, so that that you're not going to get knocked on here. It's just, I see that when we go to fighting and we're looking at that. Max, how are you, Max? We've been talking about the art of forms, Kenpo style, and we've had an overview, a recap a little bit over the last 3 videos. And the purpose of today is to talk about, now we're going into the encyclopedia, which is starting with form 3. I'm using that collectively. Mr. Sullivan told us about it as he came up back in 59, Mr. Sullivan? Is that when you said it was?
February 59, right?
Time. The question for you, Max, how do you address form 3? I'm saying short 3 because that's how I know it. Short 3, what are you looking for? What do you try to focus in on?
Well, every form has a theme.
Correct.
So when you're teaching and watching somebody do the form, I'm looking for them to to emphasize the theme of the form. So the mechanics are there, the strikes are there, then for all the information that they're supposed to show for it to be there, because there's a lot of times people do a form and half of the information is missing. Like Sifu mentioned, the headbutt.
Why is that, Max? Why is it missing?
Poor instruction. People who teach it don't know it's there. There's only one reason people leave it out is they don't know it's there. And when you're doing a form, you're telling a story.
Or they're going too fast. They recognize.
Well, that's part of it. Is once again, you're going faster than, you can show everything, and there's an old Kenpo saying, it's not how fast you can go, but how you can go fast that counts. So if you're going too fast and you're leaving stuff out, then it's just too fast. But a lot of times it's people don't know it's there. So, that's very important. I watch people do a form sometimes and they say, what do you think of it? I said, well, if he knew what he was doing, he would do it a lot better. And people say, what do you mean? I said, well, and it's true. They're physically able to do the motion, but they don't know what it contains or what it's supposed to show. And you can tell it right away if you know what's there.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of times it's not necessarily that the practitioner is not, capable of doing the information. They just don't know it's there.
Okay. Moving right over, Mr. White. When you're stressing form 3, let's just go 3 because that's pretty favorite among all of us. Do you ever take the hands out of the equation while training?
You mean just use footwork and stance transitions?
Yeah, and work from the ground up?
Well, we work from the ground up, Paul, but I don't really separate them. I really like the concept of it becoming a habit of working together as a team so that the upper body and the lower body are working together. Timing's a little bit different. We do our forward bow as an example. The hips move first and then the hands will follow, just like hitting a golf ball or baseball or tennis ball. The hips are the larger mass, so they take a little bit longer to get around. You want everything to culminate at the same time, but not a division in practice. We do that sometimes in short form 1, we'll just do the feet. Or maybe short form 2, we'll just do the feet. But by the time they get to brown belt or short form 3, they should have a pretty good concept of the idea of having this team effort.
Dennis Conatser. Hello. Unmute yourself, sir. I'm hearing somebody's back noise. I don't know what that is, but anyway, help us out, folks. Are you there, Dennis?
Yeah, when you're not talking, everybody mute your mics. That way we don't get any background talk.
Thank you.
or noise.
Because I will give you I'll signal. I'll be like short three. I'll grab you first, then you know the punch is coming. Okay. Okay, Dennis, what is it about short three that we work on with you?
Well, you know, short three again is a variety of different grabs, you know, and so I wish Chuck was there or somebody was there, you know, at the time. It is interesting, or would be interesting, is why did he choose these particular techniques and why did he put them in this particular order? It's obviously that they're grabs, because grabs start with the web of knowledge, which are the first category, grabs and tackles, which are the, you know, least most damaging of all the attacks. Pushes, punches, kicks, hugs, holds, lock, chokes, weapons and combinations are obviously, you know, progressively more dangerous, which is where the web of knowledge came in. So you're starting with the very bottom of the, you know, the attacks. And so, you know, to me, like Mr. Planas says, it makes sense that, you know, you start with, you know, the lowest common denominator of attacks and you work up. Then you go to the 4 with punches and all that kind of thing, and combinations and the 5 takedowns and so on and so forth. But, you know, the 3s are, you know, it was probably everybody's favorite form in the beginning, because it was the first fun form. I mean, to me, it wasn't, you know, stepping back in a box and just doing basic blocks or whatever. And so you're actually doing something that's actually a little more real in terms of self-defense. And, you know, you're progressing through, and there's a lot more body motion going on. There's a lot of mechanics going on with the clock. You know, he talked about a lot of things with that. And one thing that I think people do is a lot of time I see monotone forms. There's no timing expression whatsoever. There's just first technique into the next technique, into the next technique, into the next technique, and there's no real expression to the individual technique, which gets into timing, you know, and I understand that, you know, the beginner has to start with just learning the form, like Mr. White says. You know, you got to start with memorization. You got to memorize whatever you're doing, and after you memorize it, then you can start putting in, you know, the accentuated parts and actually making the technique come alive. And so I find it, it's a fun.
You up mute. Oh, I'm going to go over to Mr. Planas because I lost Dennis there for a second. Mr. Planas, you have a saying that I might be paraphrasing you, but you said each of the forms have an incorrect technique or first move. Maybe it wasn't the first move, but there's an incorrect move in there on purpose. What is the incorrect move in short three?
Okay, again, there's something wrong with all of the techniques, the first technique and all of the technique forms. 4 or 3, 4, 5, and 6. There's something wrong with the technique. So you take 3. What's the first technique?
They're talking about destructive twins.
Okay. What's wrong with destructive twins?
Could be the way that it's applied, the
Now,
application.
first of all, in category completion, you had your singles, your compounds, and now you're in your duels. 3 is the dual strike form. Good and bad. There's good dual strikes and there's bad dual strikes. We show you all these dual strikes and you make up your mind. That's worthless. I would never do that. Why am I doing it? Because of singles and duels are part of category completion. So you have your dual strike. And I wish I was on the mat with everybody and I would show you that. I say, I'll put it another way. What is the difference between the first technique in 3 and cross of death?
Open up to anyone. Jason.
Well, in destructive twins, the first move, we're stepping forward and striking the nose and the groin. And
you're doing the same thing in cross of death.
And the other one, we're going across the death, we're checking the arms and going on top, hitting the
What
face.
was the first word you said there? You're doing what? You said checking? Kenpo is a checking system. So you're doing a dual strike with, and I always poke people in the eyes or rake their eyes or whatever. So you look, this is the bad thing about some dual strikes, not all, but there's no check. You can't check when you're busy dual strike. And then what's the angle change?
With
What's the angle change?
after the uppercut in Cross of Death.
Yeah.
So.
Well, no. When you do the wipe off and the angle change.
With destructive twins, right?
You
when
step
you step
off with
and
your front
punch.
foot and open your center line. That's a no-no.
Right.
The rule in Kenpo is take your opponent's center line, but never give him yours. So you do a dual strike with no checks, and then you open your center line, which is not the case in Cross of Death. You check with your high and low hits, which are inverted, and then you change the angle with your rear foot to keep your center line closed. It's the same technique done correctly. So again, I say we don't only show you what to do correctly, we show you what not to do. And if you understand your rules and principles of motion, that you learn that, say, well, isn't this wrong? Should I do this? Well, that's for you to say. I learn better, but that's it. See, and that's just talking about this one. I'm not going to talk about the others 4, 5, and 6, but that's in 3. But there's the same kind of stuff that you got to look at.
Okay, did you catch what Mr. Planas was saying?
Yeah, I have a variance of opinion on that.
Well, what's your opinion then?
I think I don't think
You know what
there's
they say
no
about
check.
opinions.
Come on. Tell us. Max, don't laugh.
Nope.
You're next.
Well, it's like, you're not checking when you're doing a dual strike like that. Your dual strike is your check. You don't have 3 hands or 4 hands. So
That's right. You're not an octopus.
So that becomes your check. Then the other thing is, keeping your center line and your groin protected. And so, but when you're being pulled or checked that way, sometimes you have no choice but to step into that, and then you step off to try to, get out of that line and turn your body, and then set yourself up, and then the follow up with the timing after that in terms of knocking the arm off and throwing him off angle and off balance, then cancels his ability, if you do it correctly, to keep your center line, checked until you can get back in line and move yourself back. So there's other factors there involved that I see.
Well, I'm going to interject here. If somebody was going to grab me with both hands around the throat, at least I know where his damn hands are. Okay? If he was just standing squaring off on me, his left is up and his right is cocked, I'm not sure which of those is coming at me, and then I have to respond to that. But at least I know that these hands are committed. That's where I can respond. So that double strike, as you can say, will do 2 things. One, it will send pain to the opponent real quick and allow me to manipulate and cancel out what he's doing. Then in that split second, if I am smart enough to do this and I have practiced diligently and I am aware of my center line and my groin, I'm going to enter into an area of pain for him. Now, he's got into my area, my zone. We can talk about height, width, and depth. We know about distance, and we know about obscurity, the other aspects of what we talk about. But right here, when you're looking at destructive twins, that is going to happen in a millisecond, folks. We're not going to have a lot of time for this guy to respond. He thinks he's in advantage. And if you are thinking in your mind, I'm aware bad things can happen. He's coming at me. He's going to grab me. 2, I'm going to inflict pain. I've made a commitment. You try to hurt me, I'm going to mess you up. 3rd, I commit to that. So, this is a training technique. It is a base move, as Frank would tell me, and he would use other words that I can't say right now, but it would be very quick. So I understand what we're talking about here, but I wanted to get an idea of why these techniques are in this order. I'll say this much. It is one of the most direct techniques we have, and is a very, very effective striking response to an opponent. What are your thoughts on that, Max?
Well, couple of years ago in Sweden, I did a whole seminar on this technique, and we looked at the ideal phase and all the issues and problems that arise out of it that Sifu had mentioned. And then we did about 37 variations that you can do out of that position. A lot of times people also don't realize when you step in and you do your first strike, the right hand that's on the bottom has to get to the top, and then the top hand goes to the bottom. You know what I mean? So you take the hand that's underneath and you put it on top, and you're going the long way to check. There's many ways to do it where you can do it better and quicker. And, even if you committed to the first move and did the dual strike, your left hand is on top, and that's the hand that's there to check and keep the hands from going in your eyes. So if you look at the next form, which is protecting fans, we're doing the same motion on the other side. So here we're going a right inward, left outward, poke with the rear hand, strike with the front hand into a horse. The next form does an inward outward with the left right, pokes with the front hand and strikes with the rear hand into a horse. So you're doing the same thing. So if you take Destructive Twins and use the other side of the figure eight, in out, and counter with the strong side and step off, you're a lot safer and a lot better position, and you end up innovating the storm. And there's many things you can do. When I say analyze the system and look at what you're doing, instead of stepping off into a horse and doing a front hand square punch, there's much better ways to do it, and you're doing the same thing better. But, like Sifu always says, that's for the practitioner to decide.
Good point.
We never ever lose in class doing the techniques. You always win, and that's one of the kind of, for a lot of people, the fallacies is the opponent never resists. He attacks and stands there. So everything works in class. But on the street, once again, where the guy is going to have two hands and two feet, and he won't stop just because you hit him usually. If he does, you're lucky. But, you got to take all that into consideration. So, yes, it can be done, but a lot of times I also tell people, I said, it's not that it can't be done. Look at the amount of speed, pizzazz, and effort that has to go into making it work. So now you're chancing who's quicker or stronger.
Well, we're looking at a base move.
Yes.
Okay. I will borrow something from Mr. Sullivan, and something that Mr. Planas said on that strike, and I'm coming in, guess where that head's going to go? It's going to smack him into that, right on that nose if I can. Because I'm coming in, he's coming at me. He's already there. And those hands are not going to protect him. They're trying to choke me. So
yeah, but if you're punching him in the nose, how are you headbutting him there?
As a follow.
That was going to be my question.
Well,
you know what I mean?
If he still holds on and I strike him.
Well, kick him in the groin. If he hangs on, if he's still there, you stretch him out, just boot him. A lot of times people don't think that. You step in and hit him, and that stretches him out. Front kick him to the groin and get out.
Well, taking out the foundation. I always think knees and below. Because without those things, you cannot stand. That's a personal choice on me. But we will adapt. Let's go to Lori. Lori, Destructive Twins. Guy comes up. Hey, he wants to attack you. You're more likely to get attacked than Mr. Planas or Max. And if they see Chuck Sullivan, they're going to run. I know it. So, Lori, you get some guy coming up. He's going to grab you in the throat. How do you feel about Destructive Twins? And what you just heard?
It's probably not my go-to move. But in the world of Kenpo, and especially when you're at my stage, which is still a very new learning stage, you go with what you're taught and you give it a shot, right? But on the street, that probably would not be my go-to move. I probably am going to do whatever it takes to get out of there as quick as I can.
Okay, let's go down to Tony. Hello, Tony. Welcome to the Kenpo. You just disappeared on me, Tony. What happened? I said your name.
He's good for that.
There you go. Hello, Tony. Welcome. We haven't heard from you. Thank you for joining us today. What are your thoughts on short three? And then you can tell us about Destructive Twins.
I love short three. It's a fun form to do. Destructive twins. I mean, I've heard the comments and you know, whether I would use that technique, I don't know. I might use the first move to hit him in the face and the groin, right? I don't think I'd do the rest of it after that. I just probably continue moving forward and then.
Why not?
I like to go more direct and go at them than you know, getting off this. I just the whole parry and the whole punch in the square. I wouldn't do that. So.
Okay, you won't do that. So what would you do then? You're just gonna use the first part of the technique?
I'd probably go right to the groin and maybe elbow to the face after that.
Okay, Jason, thoughts?
I like the technique in general, but just as others have said, I believe that the, stepping off and stepping to the square horse is really not exactly the best thing to do. I'm kind of in agreement with Tony on this. I'm thinking that maybe the first movement and then just letting eyes see what you need to do from there. If his hands are dropped, then I guess you can go with something different. You're never going to really know until you're in the moment of combat and you need to move with a particular technique. But I'm hoping that at this stage in the game that make the right choices. But stepping off into the square horse, not really the greatest options, I don't think.
Is that bad motion?
I don't know if I want to necessarily go there, but
Wait,
I don't
no, Jason. Jason, I love you, man. You always something good. Mr.
Just remember your rules and principles.
So
that's right.
Please help us understand. Come on, Jason.
Yeah, exactly. As long as you adhere to the rules and principles, there are obviously better choices. Would I call it bad motion? I don't necessarily know if I would. I think that there would just be a lot better other things to be done instead. And again, until we're at the moment of combat to actually make those physical decisions at that time, it's always going to be up to everybody's guess and everybody's skill level and to be able to move from there.
Kim, Johnny, Manny, we haven't heard from you. How you guys? You holding up?
Still alive. We're still alive.
Good, good.
That's the Kenpo Three Stooges.
Destructive twins.
What about? I think all the guys probably covered a lot, but personally, I wouldn't use it. I would just go down the yellow and use a Maze of Aggression or something like that. Keep it more simple. And hit him with some elbows. That is what's count. Hard weapons. So hard hit. So. Yeah, that's my point.
Mr. Planas, what are your thoughts on what you've heard?
Well, like I said, you learn your rules and principles. People, for some reason, I've put up with it for years, people just can't accept that we're showing you something wrong. And I can show you all kinds of techniques that are done wrong in the forms. Just take a look at thrusting lance in 6. Every move is wrong. The first move in 5, compare it to the technique in the book, it's wrong, but you got to know why and how come. But people, for some reason, just don't want to accept that, or they don't think that way because they're, it's all good. It's all good. Like Mr. Parker said, I can show you how to jump on a bridge or how to jump off a bridge. If I show you how to jump on the bridge, I got to show you how to jump off. You want to jump on or off? See, I got to show you both sides of the coin. See, one's good, one's bad. See, so that's just to make that cross reference.
Do you find, Mr. Planas, when you watch people do the forms that are non-students of yours, let's qualify that, okay? You're watching some other Kenpo practitioner, and you see them do a form, and they do the form, the opening technique, the way they would do it on the mat, not the way it's supposed to be done in the form. What are your thoughts on that?
What do you mean the way they would do it on the mat?
For example, they'll do, say the form incorrect. Let's say destructive twins, because we're on 3, okay? and their center line.
Destructive Twins in the book is exactly the way it is in the form.
Yeah, but they will try to do something different. I've seen
Well, that's because they're thinking. They say, I don't like that. I don't want to give my center line, and I don't want to strike without a check. You know, that's what saying the old man had. In Kenpo is a checking system. You can't say hit in Kenpo without saying check, but then we do it. So you say, what's wrong with that? I'm missing a check, you know, which I'm going to be missing some teeth or whatever. So it just reiterates that point, you know.
Well, you know, talking with Mr. Parker myself, personally, talking for myself, if that's the case, what you're saying, first of all, the technique's for a grab, choke, and a pull in. So you're going to be pulling in forward. When you're pulled in, you know, that's something that you may not be anticipating, and you're going forward, and your hands are going to, you know, naturally come forward to try to break your fall if you're going forward. So, you know, a lot of these techniques were brought to Mr. Parker, I think, originally. Mr. Sullivan would be on that. In class, someone would say, well, what would you do if somebody grabbed you or attacked you like X? And he would say, well, let me see. And then you do something, and he would come up with some series of motions that would later possibly become a technique name. You know, so when you're being pulled forward, you got these two hands going forward. You know, the next move after that, you bring your left hand down, you're pulling the hand down. So what you're doing consequently down is you're not leaving yourself open necessarily. You are checking them. You're not checking on the first move, right? Because both hands are in striking mode, you know, and of course, those are going to have an action-reaction type thing. If you have no reaction to your moves, then the violation there is you never hit them properly. You know, you got to have some reaction to, you know, what you did type thing. So I find a lot of flaws in a lot of this. You know, it depends on how you do the technique, why you do the technique. If you're attacked, you know, instantaneously, and you're going forward, you might have no choices to do. Sure, you can say, well, you could do this, you could do this. Well, I could go down in yellow belt and I can do this. That ain't going to happen. It ain't going to happen. You don't have time to think about choosing a technique once you're attacked. You just have to react. And that's the whole point of training, is to train so that your body, you know.
That goes back to what Max was saying with the variation. He took that technique of Destructive Twins and they modified it 37 different ways. Variables, you know, changing around when you wanted the application. Jason.
Yes.
Do you when you train, do you look at all the different variables that present the technique? Because you just said you didn't really like the after the initial dual strike of Destructive Twins.
I do, yes.
What are you doing? Are you thinking of different options? Are you doing forming expansion? What are you doing? Rearrangement? What are you doing there? Help us to understand.
The only time that I start doing that is after the student actually has a firm grasp of the actual technique itself. What is what we would consider to be the as-written version of it, and then go into expand on from there. But yes, I try to do techniques like that, so it just expands their knowledge base, and not just limited to Destructive Twins, of course, but to anything else. But since we're talking about Destructive Twins, we don't get too much time on doing stuff like that. I don't think with this particular one in general, but it is, all the techniques have to be looked at like that, though.
Okay, then move on. Let's go to Crashing Wings. I'm going right now. 13 tech.
Hang on a second. I got a question on it too. You know, if all of this is so bad, if we're doing this and everything's so wrong, why are we doing Destructive Twins anyway? I don't get it. You know, everybody's saying, well,
category completion. Like I said,
I've never heard the word category completion from Mr. Parker once in my life.
That's because you were never around to learn it. That's why I talked to you about that in Vegas.
I was around.
You've never learned
20.
it. Don't think it doesn't exist. There's
Oh,
many people.
Don't tell me that. I was around 20.
That can say they've heard the old man talk about this.
I'm not against category. You know, I'm not against learning all the different possibilities up and down and in and out. I'm not talking about that. I'm just saying.
And there's not so much. It just shows, hey, look, here's a couple of moves. What do you think about this? This does not go with the rules and principles.
Well, then if it doesn't go with the rules and principles, why are we even doing it then? Why don't
to make you think?
To see if you learn the rules and principles. To see if you learn the rules and principles.
Let me intercede here, guys.
I bet you love blinding sacrifice too, don't you? I bet you just love it. And every move in that is wrong. It's all category completion moves. You know, and nobody I've ever seen can do correctly.
I'll bet you love scotch, and that's not good for you either.
Okay,
that's beside the point.
Personal. Let's go with this. The number one thing I think that I heard, and I got this from Mr. Planas, and I've got this from Mr. Conatser, so you guys have to be on the same page. If there was one thing that Mr. Parker wanted us to know, to learn, to be able to expand upon, is the word think. Max hit it right on the head. You jumped me, Max. Sorry about that, but you're right. The word is think. You know, these are just exercises in motion. Let's keep it simple. But they were categorized, and the reason there's a category completion is because there is a left side, there's a right side, there is a winning side, there's a living side for us. The bottom line is we want to live. If not, it's a waste of time, folks, on everything here. So let's look at what's going on next. The forms, in this form here particularly, the question is, some people like them. Some people don't like forms. I personally like forms. I got a lot out of it because I learned them from Frank and Steve Herring. And I know who they were learning from too. So we're moving on to crashing wings. And then after that, we have twirling wings. And Mr. Planas brought that up, why we're learning that. Okay, he was practicing it. Jason, walk us through those two techniques. Why do we do those? And what's the purpose of them?
Well, we're continuing on the theme with dual strikes for one. You know, one guy, both of them are behind us with crashing wings and twirling wings, both doing two different things, still utilizing the dual strikes. What else are you looking to get into?
No, I'm just trying to just help us walk us through it. So now we're dealing with an obscurity.
Right. So in crashing wings, you step off the horse and get behind the guy and elbow and hammer him down to the groin, and then V-step into the guy behind you into twirling wings. Different V-step, still doing the same thing, covering our center line and moving in, taking the guy down with crashing wings and keeping the guy up and twirling wings.
Well, Mr. Planas always said that, again, I'm paraphrasing you, sir, so forgive me. It's been a couple weeks since we talked. Coming attractions, what did you say, previews? Is that what it is?
That's a hand isolation, the definition of a hand isolation.
No, but
previews of coming attractions,
exactly.
Things that are there or things that are not there, and if they're not there, where are they?
Okay.
But the difference is, like I talked about in 6 when we were talking the other day, you have inside, outside, inside, outside, inside, outside, inside, outside, and you learn what you can mess up or what's good about being inside, what's good about being outside. So this is the same thing. You start off with a bad dual strike, then you go into a good dual strike. Crashing wings is a good dual strike. It's got built-in checks. There's no problem with that. That is a good dual strike.
Okay. Okay. Did you catch that, Jason?
Yes, I did. Yes.
Okay. So we're continuing on. So we've had the dual strike. Now we're going on continuing with dual strikes. What happens after that?
Circling wing after twirling wings.
Okay.
So then you got a rear two-hand grab to the shoulders or possibly a two-handed choke from the 6 o'clock position once again.
I have to say, I think it's a slick transition between those two techniques, to be honest with you.
I agree.
You know, it just flows. So whoever came up with that, Chuck, if it was Mr. Parker or, who knows, divine intervention, whatever it is, I'm going to tell you right now, great slide. It falls into the continuity of keeping a fluid motion that we've talked about in the past when we were with the gentleman here. And I think it just continues on with that. So let's go on to that. After that, we're into what?
Paul.
I'm sorry, you go ahead, Huck.
I don't know what you meant by that. The transition you like. What are you talking about?
Oh, when you go from crashing wings into twirling
wings, and then the twirling wings into circling wings.
Sir, it's I don't have a lot of dance experience. Forgive me. Dancing with the Stars was never on my agenda.
Mm-hmm.
I was mostly making the strumming. But in the time I worked in production shows, I always had an admiration for athletes. And the dancers I worked with were incredible. They could be told to do certain things and they would pick it up in a matter of moments, and then they would execute it flawlessly. When I see a true Kenpoist that has worked very diligently on the flow of doing a form like short three, and they have it down, and you watch it, boy, it is an exercise in beauty. It really is. You start to see this thing flow, and I'm telling you right now, Trejo did that transition, and it was just, sometimes I'd sit there and pass it and say, gee whiz, would you do that again? I didn't really get what you were doing there. And he'd look at me funny like, what? Not
Which
knowing
transition, Paul, which transition are you talking about?
between the two techniques, between
Which
crossing
one?
and twirling. And I would like to watch him because he was so smooth, and it was just the flow was there the whole time.
Between crashing wings and twirling wings? Crashing
No.
wings to twirling wings, or twirling wings to circling wings?
No, I'm going from crashing into twirling.
Okay, that's so simple.
Yeah,
You
I
only
know.
got to move one hand, your left hand's in place.
Yeah, but the
And
point
then
I'm saying,
remember, twirling wings is done left-handed in the form. The rule is strong side first. When
sure.
you do left side first, there's a reason for it, and you want to understand that. But anyway, if you do twirling wings, it's got two elbows in it.
Sure.
There's
Yeah,
only one in the form, unless you look at the step through and the cock.
Yeah.
If you do the step through and the cock, then you have the two elbows, and that's an old technique called opening cowl. That was the second variation of twirling wings, when the guy moves back and you have to step through, huh?
It was called what?
Opening cowl.
Opening cowl.
Opening cowl.
Chuck, do you know that technique? No, Chuck saying, are you still there, sir? Chuck Sullivan.
All right, I got myself unmuted. No, I don't know that technique. In fact, the ones that you're talking about, I've forgotten all the names. I only do them in the form. I don't do any of the techniques as techniques. Somebody grabs me by the throat, he's going to get two fingers in one finger in each eye, up to the second knuckle.
So when
and
you
then followed by the groin, followed by a headbutt. I'm going to get as much as I can, as fast as I can. He's already got his hands committed around my throat, and I've got reach on him because his arms are going to be down. He's going to have two fingers poking out the back of his head.
Well, when you teach that form, though, don't you tell the student the name of the technique he's doing?
No. I've only taught it to a few people. Back in the old days, yeah, we had all the names and everything like that. Now I just do it because it's like I said, old school Kenpo.
Okay.
And I like them to have the form. They have no idea what they're doing. In many cases, they have no idea whatsoever of what they're doing. And they don't have to, because, like I said, it's just an old-time traditional form. I don't care for the techniques that are in it, generally speaking, in fact, almost entirely. So it's just one of those nostalgic things for me.
Okay, so you're keeping it just because of your history with it.
Exactly.
I see that.
Yep.
Okay. Then, okay, Tony. Okay, you're there. Tony.
Yes, sir.
Just heard what we've had a discussion on some of these techniques, all right, and the form.
Yes.
What is your opinion on what you just heard?
I heard. I've never heard of that technique.
I'm sorry?
As far as the transition?
Obviously you're hearing some of it's being taught for historical reasons. Others are being taught because of the criteria. And what are your thoughts of that? And I'm going to go right to you on screen.
As far as who wants to teach what, it's up to the person that runs that organization what they want to teach, right? I mean, who am I to say who's supposed to teach what form?
I see. Max, help me out here, friend.
So you're talking about what part exactly, Paul?
I'm taking you back. As you heard that Mr. Sullivan teaches it because of his background, was one of the first forms that he was taught by Mr. Parker. Okay. We're talking about right now, looking at this, the motion that we see in it, the transitions between the techniques, the fluidity of it, it just flows for me personally. Okay. And you're seeing how we use double strikes in the beginning, and then it goes to double strikes with crashing wings and then twirling wings. Okay. And then we move on from there. What are your thoughts on that? About those techniques and how they can be applied?
Well, anything can be applied if the timing and the position and the opportunity is there. It's once again, what do you have to give up, or how much precision do you need to make it happen? It's like saying, what's more effective in a street fight, a front kick to the groin or a spinning hook kick to the head? It depends on who's doing it and the context. For most people, the front kick to the groin probably, but you get somebody like Bill Wallace or whatnot, they can say, I can kick your head off, no problem.
Is he the exception?
Well, it's margin for error. Look at, on average, if you take 100 people, even martial artists, look at the timing and the position and the balance that you have to give up to do a front kick to the groin versus a spinning hook kick to the head. And what happens if you don't hit it? You know what I mean? So it's the same thing with a lot of our techniques. It's not, when we say wrong, it's not, we teach everything as good, better, best. So it's for you, but once again, it depends on the people. There's, I can do twirling sacrifice on a lot of people that cannot do it on me. So for me, it's okay. But you know what I mean? For me to say, oh, it's a great technique, no, because, you have to look at it realistically, but you understand what it's there for. And once again, you might end up in that position, and that's what you have at the moment. So a lot of these techniques, not to say that, I don't know, people get offended or upset when we say that, but it's just for you to think, say, hey, what am I giving up? I can step with the front foot, I can zone with the rear foot. One puts me in the horse, one puts me in the neutral bow. Which one is which one is our normal fighting stance? Which one loads the weapons better? Zones is, it should be apparent. This is not about, whose version is better or not. The system is done that way, systematic. That's why it's a system. You do everything systematically to cover all these aspects, to cover the clock principle and to take all the basics through it and all the ways you can use them. But some, like I said, some are better than others. Some are usable in different contexts. That's what a lot of people don't realize as well. We do stuff to say, yeah, well, I wouldn't do it here, but you can do it there, and it becomes okay. So this is all, once again, and a lot of it depends on the practitioner. Some of it you might not really do as a green belt, but when you put 5 more years into it and develop the speed, power, and precision, you can do it. So it all has merit, but I like to teach and do everything for a reason, for the student to understand, the good, the bad, and the ugly of everything, so the benefit of a dual strike, you get 2 hits at once. The bad of it is, once again, if you're hitting with 2 hands, you don't have a check. So certain positions, like Sifu said, it's more forgiving than others, and you just have to be aware of it. If you broke his nose and he's damn near knocked out, you probably have time to do a lot of stuff, but if you didn't and he's standing there mad and, you're going to find out real quick. So.
In the times I was in Pasadena and I had personal conversations with Mr. Parker, he brought that up to me about kicking to the head, a la Bill Wallace. He said, it's good. You can kick them in the head, Paul, when they're laying on the ground. All right. And he put it in perspective. The most direct, the most simplistic, most effective response is what is called upon. If that meant just, I'm sorry, and you walked away, you won that fight. But if you're going to get it on, you're going to do the most. You're not going to try to get fancy. You're going to try to respond and be effective.
Exactly what Sifu was talking about. He told you that. And then you learn twin looping back knuckles to the kidneys and blinding sacrifice. And you cannot tell me that strike is a killing, fight-ending strike. You know what I mean?
Sure, absolutely.
you know, so it should be apparent. Yes, what he taught and what he showed were not always the same thing, but that's the reason why.
It's sort of
You
like
have to.
your toolbox, Max. You obviously have a very large toolbox, a lot of material, a lot of information,
Everything's
a lot of
large.
experience. Just be nice to him. Okay, hold on. He's going to raid. Okay, here's the deal. Mr. Planas is going to raid that darn toolbox of yours before long, so be careful. He shows you all this material. Parker used to always say that. He used one time an analogy. He says, Paul, you got a block of ice. How do you chip away if you only need a couple slices? Well, you get an ice pick, Paul. Okay, I could use a hammer, or I could use a screwdriver or a wrench, but that's not the tool I needed. So thus, you have this expansion of many opportunities to draw from tools. If, one, you know about the tools, two, you've learned the uses of those tools, and three, if the situation presents itself so that proper tool can be there. Okay? So
I agree.
These forms, these techniques, go back to what Frank used to tell me. They're base ideas, initial response, and if you go through it, he would walk me through it. And he says, sometimes, he actually said some things that you said. He said, this ain't going to work, man. And
Well, I've spent a lot of time with Frank and many hours on the phone and in person. I drove him crazy arguing. You know, he used to always say, you've been with Huck for so long, you start to sound like him. And he would.
That's a compliment, because Frank held Planas in extremely high regard. And
I know. He's the one who sent me to study with Mr. Planas.
See, that got him off of his back.
Well, yeah, I drove him crazy with questions, and he told me.
I hated him for it ever since.
Gee whiz, now the truth comes out. But no, it's you know, it's nice. This is the most I've ever got out of you, Max, by the way. I really am enjoying this. I'm staying with it. I'm staying with it as long as I can, because you have
love it.
Knowledge here, and it's important. Going through, continuing on, you know, you look at what we have after
I want to add something to this.
Sure, go ahead, sir.
Remember, the forms reflect forwards and backwards. So isolations a lot of times reflect to something you're going to do later on, or something you previously did and you want to understand why. So 3 is called a dual strike form, but it's not all dual strikes. Like I said, it goes into the compound too. Oh, here's some more compounds that we left out. See, like we did, like when you did your outward with your punch, you know, and where does that first move in 2 has to go? Where does it have to be?
I'm featuring you right now. Max, go ahead and respond. Sifu's asking you a question.
He's asking me.
Your position.
Everybody. I love it when
it can be inside or outside. Where does it have to be?
Inside.
It's got to be inside. Inside of what?
Inside of your opponent, inside the punch.
Inside of right. Inside of right, outside of left, outside of left, outside of right. Inside and outside is part of category completion. So we do that. So when you did that first move in 2, you were inside right. Then twirling wings, where is that?
Outside.
A left. Outside of left. See. So I look at the, okay, let's just look at one strike combination. Inward, outward elbow. Inward, outward elbow. It's found all through the forms. Where's all the positions that we do the inward, outward elbow?
Jason.
Gripping talon, triggered salute, mace of aggression. We're doing it within the form, within twirling wings, the circling wing, and just to name a few.
That's right, and you got to look at the position.
Exactly.
Flashing wings, where are you? Outside of right.
Outside to right.
Triggered salute, where are you? Inside of right. Gripping talon, outside of left. See, so on and so forth. So you put this inward-outward strike combination in all possible places to use it. And that's, again, category completion. How many ways can I use this? There's other ones, but I'm not going to bring them up.
Dennis Conatser, your thoughts?
You know, I hear what he's saying, inside, outside, and I mean, there's only so many ways you can do that. I mean, and you have to, you should go through all the different options and possibilities of an attack. Work on the inside, work on the outside, over the top, underneath. That gets into the completing all the possibilities for what you can do, what you actually
That's the way it's laid out.
What you do on the street depends on how much you've trained all those things.
And what you want to do. On the street, you do what you want to do based on what you learn.
Not only what you want to do, but what you're forced to do sometimes.
Everything is what you want to do.
How you react.
Is what you want to do. That's what the word self-defense is all about. You yourself makes every decision that you make. You and you alone.
Well, I disagree.
When you look at
the instructor's not going to do it for you.
No, I didn't say the instructor. You're out there on the street. It's not. You're at the word want to do. Sometimes you just do what you do.
Have to do or want to do. A lot of times you make the wrong decision.
Well, it's what you react to do.
I talk about that. World Heavyweight Championship boxing match tonight. Both 6'5", 280 pounds, all undefeated, same kind of boxing record, 27 knockouts each, no losses. There's going to be a winner and a loser. Who wins? The lucky one. He got a misread or whatever. He just did what he thought he should do, but it didn't work, and he got his clock clean. Next week they fight, and the other guy wins. That's what the old man used to call a moment of truth. That's when you find out what you can and can't do. But again, it's your decision, nobody else's.
Well, they can do a lot of things. What they end up doing is a whole nother thing. And why didn't they do this or that? And that's because they made a mistake, they made a miscalculation, they were tired, whatever. And the other guy capitalized on that moment of blankness on the inside.
We're not talking about that. We're not talking about that. I'll relate it to another technique. Deceptive panther. You know deceptive panther?
Okay.
What's it for?
It's for an attack against a kick punch.
Huh?
That's what I'm thinking. I don't know. What's
Anybody?
it for, Jason? Help me out.
Deceptive panther for?
Jason.
Front snap roundhouse combination on the
Snap
same
round.
leg.
Okay. Boom, boom.
A switch kick, a Bill Wallace switch kick. Fake low, go high. I ask this question all the time. Who can read a switch kick? There's only one person on the world or on the earth that can read a switch kick. Who's that?
Well, I would say Benny or Kiedis, or Bill Wallace.
No. I've worked with Bill on this stuff so many times. Yeah. What is the purpose of a switch kick?
I would think it's to drop your hands.
To fake you out.
Yeah.
To fake you out. Okay. So there's only one person that can read a switch kick, a mind reader. Oh, he's going to do a switch kick on me. There's not a person in the world that can read a switch kick. That's why we have Deceptive Panther. What is the block on Deceptive Panther? The universal to cover low and high in case he does the switch kick. But all the other ones, thrusting, salute type, just to mention one, uses a standard downward block against the front kick. If the guy switch kick, your teeth would fly. Your teeth would fly. Yeah.
Well, that's why it's called deceptive.
That's just to make a point. Look, the guy switch kicking. Who can switch kick? A trained martial artist, but that's not the scenario. But if he does that and fakes you out, is that a fault of the art or a personal fault?
God, I'm going to say it's a personal fault.
That's right, it's a personal fault. But again, nobody can read it, so there's nobody to blame.
No,
I lost a tooth proving that. I was in a seminar once and said, who here can do a good switch kick? And the guy came out and said, oh, they look pretty good, close to what Bill does. Wallace.
I got a question for you, Mr.
When you come out with a kick and I do that downward block and you switch kick, my front hand is low and your foot's up here in my head, and he knocked one, it was a cap, but he knocked the tooth out to prove the point. You're doing what you're supposed to do because you got the blink of an eye to read in the first place. So you moved on the first move. Your reaction was on the first move and he faked you out and you lost your head or your tooth or whatever. It's not a fault of the art. It's a trained man and he's better than you are.
Mr. Planas, and I'm going to interrupt you, Mr. Conatser. You can come back. You know, I saw, did Bill Wallace figure that one out? Did he ever get it from you? Did he,
What?
That block that you were talking about for the switch kit?
Which block?
The universal that you were talking about.
No. That's what the universal's for. So that just makes that point. I said, look, you should do universal all roundhouse kicks or all kicks. That's for you to say, but we taught you that principle. See? But you know, I mean, I've been working with Bill back in Pasadena days when he used to come in from Riverside and work out with us on weekends. You know, that's where I first met Bill many years ago. When he first came in, he had that brace on his leg and stuff. You know, I said, "Oh man, I better take it easy on this guy. He's got a bad leg." Boy, was I wrong. You know.
Sure.
And so Bill would be working on stuff, and he'd say, "Okay, Huck, I'm going to try to do this." He said, "Try to block it." I couldn't even come close because his timing and his mechanics were so great that you just knew he was throwing that, and you lost your head. And I've seen him do it in demonstrations and stuff many times. But again, that's the premise of a trained man against a trained man. That's why you do a switch kick.
It's funny.
The art is not taught that way. The art is taught just like Kung Fu series. What was that? That Kung Fu. We never saw that before. So all arts are taught as you were a trained man against a nobody, know nothing, that doesn't know how to move and telegraphs and everything else. See, so that's the way the art is taught.
Yeah, it's funny as you say that is that in the movie with Mr. Parker and Bong Soo-hong, Parker uses that universal block against that. They fought between the two of them. I guess it's a choreographed fight, so they obviously know.
Oh, you bet your butt.
Yeah, you know, but that was, you saw that being used against that. Going to here we go over here, Tony. Let's get on back to you for just a second, okay? Don't you just love me coming to you, sir?
Not really, but that's okay.
Good. I like it. Okay. So we moved on past twirling wings. Now went into circling wing, into crossing talon. Crossing talon. Okay. Your thoughts on crossing?
Second variation.
Got any thoughts on that? Tell us what you think.
What do I think about? I like crossing talon. I like being able to manipulate my opponent. Right. I was a wrestler, so I like getting down there and getting a hold of them. So I'd probably take them down from there and get them in an arm lock. But
So
I like crossing talon.
The initial strike and the takedown, right? Instead of pulling back and hitting on the back of going to the elbow to the back. Or would you just variation? Could you complete the technique, or when you practice it? I'm just throwing it out there for you.
When I practice it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I do variations, right? I'll do like I'll step through and do a trip, right? Take them down with a trip and basically do some knees stomps from there.
Okay. Lori. Hello, Lori. How are you?
Hi.
You always come out with a smile. That's great. That's a good way to start it. You're having a good time?
Yeah, this is great.
Okay, cool. Tell us about your thoughts on crossing talon. Is that one of your favorites?
It is one of my favorites. It's one of my favorites because I can usually make it work no matter who I'm working with. It's a matter of structure and learning how not to muscle it. So it is one of my favorites.
Teach Mr. Planas your version of crossing talon.
I don't have a version. I don't have a version, but like I said, think about this. Most people, in my opinion, and remember what they say about opinions.
Yeah.
Most people, in my opinion, cannot do crossing talons because many factors. Again, I'm not going to bring it up, but anyway, this is what we call second variation of crossing talons.
Sure.
See, the second one is in the last half of long three, but again, remember what I talked about in three, the man is now behind you when you did all this stuff. So let's put crossing talons behind you. So you cannot strike and break the arm like you do when the man's in front of you in the second half. So you say, all right, I got to do second variation. So I make my pin, see, and the old man say, never strike or never strike when you can hit or pin when you can hit. See, so the hit comes first in all the other ones. But here you can't do that because you're behind you, you're out of range. So you make the pin, and then you do the fulcrum version of crossing talon to put him in front of you. Okay. And then that pin and that fulcrum, then you do, again, another variation of that. And this is for Lori. You know, you like that technique, compare that technique. I'm not going to say a word about it, but you compare that technique to glancing spear. And I'll just tell you, it's the same technique. One's over the arm, one's under the arm. Okay. And again, that's part of category completion.
Go ahead, Lori. Hear what you have to say.
I am still in the process of learning the Kenpo system, and I sort of fell through the cracks a little bit, and then I don't have an instructor I've been able to work with a lot. So I feel like I'm just starting to put some of those pieces together and understand some of those things.
So
but I am very new to it.
No, honey, let me stop you for a second. No wrong answers. This is a learning experience. There's no pass or fail or anything like that. We're here to exchange, and hopefully when we have people like Mr. Planas, Mr. Conatser, Mr. Sullivan, etc., they'll interject, and hopefully that gives more guidance, because we're not the only ones that's going to look at this video. Other people will look at it and they'll say, you know what? I had that same question. I wasn't sure. I'm glad they brought that out. I didn't think that was a possibility. I'm glad they touched on this. Gosh, I didn't know there was a cross-reference. Like I said, every time I come on and I talk to these gentlemen, either here or privately, I learn a lot. And so that's why you're explaining how you do it will help us, and maybe we'll either learn something from it, or maybe we'll be able to gain something out so that we can share back with you. So tell us about how you address crossing talon, and in the context, I'm thinking Mr. Planas was saying, as in the form. Okay.
Yeah. So they're grabbing you from behind. So as you're turning and grabbing them and dropping your weight, I think that is one of the basics of a principle right there, is being able to drop the weight in order to control
That
your
has a name.
opponent. And that's I feel like one of the very first moves that I like to teach. I teach mostly kids, so when I teach the kids, I can show how to drop the weight to control that, and I feel like a 2-year-old can do that, and they do it naturally. The second that they decide they don't want you to, put their shirt on for the day, and they drop their weight like that, and I mean they wiggle right out of your hands, and you're obviously the much bigger, stronger person. So when I think of crossing talon, I think of, like, I have 2-year-old twins. When the twins are in their mood and they drop right out from under you, that's how I see that crossing talon work, as you're turning into it from behind.
Jason Farnsworth.
Yes.
Help her out. Clean it up just a little bit for her.
Okay. Well, I set this up myself when I'm teaching my students. When we go out of twirling wings into circling wing into crossing talon, you're going to start to walk away from your hammer fist, and they grab, and the counter grab comes immediately and shift to neutral bow. As soon as you get there, the hand starts to roll clockwise over counter grab, and drop the elbow down is the fulcrum version, to drop the weight down to force them to stay down, so you can get the elbow combination in there for the technique itself. That's how I present it in to the students that I have when we do the form itself.
What do you call that, dropping the weight?
Marriage of gravity.
Thank you very much. I was hoping somebody would say that.
No, okay.
That helps her, because she's looking for some terms. It's like,
Absolutely.
These things that we help a lot of, the thing. The thing.
Yeah.
The kind,
Yeah.
Hawaii,
Yeah.
the kind, the kind.
Yeah, whatever it is.
The kind.
There's a reason we have terms, and, I do not hold myself out to know half of these things, but it's nice to be able to hear them, and especially with a younger student that's working on that. Right now, I'm going to bring into the conversation, if he is there. Are you there, sir? Why don't you start that?
Oh, no.
our birthday boy today, Joe Rebelo, Smiling Joe Rebelo. Happy birthday, Joseph.
Thank you very much. I'm in the car, so you said that if I could call, so I wanted to call in, say hello to everybody.
You're not driving, I hope.
Huh?
Are you driving?
No.
Okay, good. Just want to make sure. Hands are free. Okay.
Yep. I am free to talk. Yes.
Okay,
Indeed.
so we're talking about short three right now. Mr. Sullivan brought that up as just one of the first three forms that he learned back in 1959. That was it. It was just called three.
Wow.
Okay. So we've gotten through most of the form itself, and we were talking about the last one is crossing town. So now we're going into.
I'm still here. It may be dark, but I'm here. Okay.
Full Nelson. Following right there, crossing talon. It is technique number 6, scraping hoof.
Sure.
Talk about it, Joseph.
Well, scraping hoof originally was a technique that's only supposed to be done on one side. It's specifically taught on both sides to teach you ambidextrous behavior and symmetrical action, to learn that you can do each side of a technique, just like repeated devastation is later on in our threes. It's purposely designed to teach us that rebounding action for that rear scoop, which some people actually use, one of the few instances in the system where we use a rear bow. And again, getting the reverse snap kick into the side blade, into scraping down the shin and stomping on the longitigial arch. And then learning actually to utilize that rotational torque to pivot our body from rear bow to rear bow. But that's the key ingredient. And also another important ingredient regarding that, no two techniques are alike in Kenpo in relationship to attacks. So there's one that's in progress and another one that's been completed. And scraping hoof is designed to be that way. You're never supposed to finish off that full Nelson. You never let the guy get the lock on the hold. That's why we shoot our arms down in the first place with our elbows and thrust our arms down. So they never complete that lock. Mr. Parker used to say this, it's either completed or in progress. So scraping hoof has always been an in progress technique. I tried to get the lock on you, but I stopped it before he could cinch in the hold, as it were, as opposed to repeated devastation where he does do it. That's why my hands have to reach back and punch the guy. And that's why those two techniques are so prevalent in relationship to being short three and long three. The first one was I was right in the middle of someone, and the other one is, oops, he got the drop on me. So that's what's great about scraping hoof.
Max, your thoughts on what Joe just said?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's why the name of the technique is scraping hoof and not scraping hoofs, as written, because it's a one-sided technique, and it wouldn't make sense, to try to do the same thing on a weak side anyway. You learn it, though, because if he doesn't grab you straight, he gets swung to one side, then the left side might be there to do the work. So you can do it on both sides, and you learn it in the form because the form matches. In short three, we only do one side because we only do one side of every technique. But in long three, we do both sides, so we do both sides of the technique there as well. But in application, it's one of the few extensions that work well, actually, and, short and sweet, and buckle the guy out, get behind his leg and put him on his butt and kick him while he's down, in a typical Kenpo fashion. But, there's information introduced in the technique, besides just what it is, that, matches up to long one and introduces some new motion that is important to look at as well. One is the rear headbutt, and, the scoop to the rear, side kick to the front, scrape stump. That's all new information. You're doing the same thing with your foot, what you did a long one with your hand to introduce reverse motion. And instead of long to short, you're going short to long. And then since your foot is up already, you say, well, I can stump as well if there's something to stump. So you introduce a stump. That's the first time in the form that you show a stump. So for a short little technique, there's a lot of information in it.
Mm-hmm.
Hallelujah.
Take us into Fatal Cross then.
Fatal Cross is, once again, category completion move, hook and wings reversed, basically. and it's, you know, the mechanics, what we do in, you know, 5 swords or raking mace with the right hand, and cross of death, the strike that we do with the left hand. Here we do a dual. You know, it's also, you know, plays into a lot of other techniques, you know, that we do, you know, crossing your hands for back knuckles on the slices. In the previous form, we alternated the back hand and the front hand. Here we do it together. Same thing with the slices. We did them parallel. Here we cross them up, do them at the same time. You know, all the stuff you can do, but same thing, you know, this twin back knuckles is not something that you rip somebody's head off with, in my opinion.
Thank you. I was hoping you would bring that up. You know, you're I can see you're very direct on your responses, which is, hey, let's face it, word no can do a lot. So can stop. So can fire, you know, depending on how you want to use these things, folks, just the application. You think, Mr. Planas, you know, with the cross back knuckles that are used, and then the dual finger poke, is that just a nod to our Chinese background?
No, like I said, 3 is the dual strike form. So it does a lot of dual strikes to say, look, you can do this, but you analyze it and you tell me if it's good or bad. See, like I said, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to say, well, I would never do that. This is because it's dual strike. See, but again, I'm going to go back to crossing talons and why scraping hoof is next or behind that. When the last move in crossing talons, what are you doing? Laura, you told me, what are you doing?
In the form, the last move?
The last move in crossing talons.
Drop
Not
it
outward
down.
overhead. It's an inward overhead. Inward overhead elbow. And we do later on, we do outwards and we do inwards, but it's an inward overhead elbow. And again, you brought it up, you said it, but you didn't put the name on it. What's the power principle for that?
Marriage of gravity.
Marriage with gravity. So you have to drop into a kneel to do that strike.
Correct.
See? Okay, scraping hoof is right behind it because now you're low. So you just showed the use of the drop. So now you're going to show the use of the raise, the reverse of it, and go the opposite direction. So I'm dropping down for power. Now I'm going to raise up for power, and that's when your hands go down and double the force or magnify the force. Then you take it from vertical to horizontal when you do scraping hoof. And that is, like Max said, that's the reverse of what you did in long one. You say that punch and going this way is an elbow. You went long and short with your hand. Now with your foot, you go short then long. You reverse that principle in the horizontal. So that's horizontal. Then you say, okay, while I'm here, like we do in short 3 when we do crashing wings, it starts from a bogus position. When you step back into normal, the cat, which represents a normal, your hands are already up. Well, that's not the way you do the technique. Your hands are already cocked. So you only have to go one direction, and that's down. So you step out and you go down, but you have to delay your timing. You have to wait for your foot to step out. So again, you're working as a synchronized unit. Some people were talking about when a hand stops, the foot stops. So when that crash happens, then that goes on. Now, so that's what you're doing in that part. But see, when we do long 3, your hands are not up; they're down at your side. So now you have to cock them and go up and down. So you have to cock as a separate move to get the crash with the elbows. So you have to add a move. Now, I ask people a lot, you know, every move is put in a category. So I say, where is the first stomp in the forms? Where do you find it? Right here in scraping hoof. You say, while my foot's up, let me show you the first stomp. If you analyze it, the direction only is right foot down. It's already up. It was cocked like your hands were in crashing wings. But then the second time you do it, you got to go up and down. You've got to cock separate and do that. But what do you do with the left foot? You only go up like you only went down with the right foot. So you had a one move with the right and a one move with the left, but you had a dual move with the right. See? Understand? Now this is just to get the ball rolling. I'm not going to complete it. See? But you got to complete both. Well, I will. You got to complete both ends of the treble, like the punch and the elbow. That's where you get into blinding sacrifice. You say, okay, here's up and down. Now I've used both ends of the travel, up and down instead of forward and backwards or horizontal and reverse, and completed the category. Reverse motion.
I got a question.
Closed.
I got a question
Yeah.
real quick. Mr. Planas, is there anything else you're going to complete? You don't want to tell us first?
Do what?
I'm just playing with you, sir. You said you don't want to tell that, then you told it. I'm having some fun. No, the point I was going to ask you on, and Max brought this up, you know, the cross back knuckles. I mean, I'm just saying it's a flare. It's a very showy move. But I'm saying you could still hit the dual. I mean, not really, you can't. It's not back knuckles if you're doing it that way. But is that just showy, Max, or is it?
What's the question? What's the question?
The question is on
What's the
fifth
question?
cross. You're doing the hooks and you're coming in with the back knuckles, and then you're doing the folks. Okay. Point is that is just the crossing aspect of the hands. Is that just the show part? Was that just something a little more flairish? The different way to do it, maybe that you normally might.
Okay, all right, Paul. Let me get so simple with this.
Please.
How do you do a normal back knuckle?
No, there's no such thing as a normal.
A right normal back knuckle. How do you do it?
Well, if you're in a fighting position, it would be straight out with the.
No, it doesn't matter. But you're again in the same position. Is your right hand cocked to your left?
My right hand cocked to my left? No, it's up in the fighting position. Depends on how you
back
define
knuckle.
cock.
That's a punch.
Yeah,
That's
well,
a
I'm in a
punch.
fighting stance.
You're going to back knuckle. You're going to put your right hand to your left and your left hand to your right. To do that as a duel, which duels is part of category completion, they have to cross.
Okay. Okay.
It is so simple. It's so simple.
All right. Well, it doesn't hurt to ask these questions, and we see what that. Let's move on. Grip of death into locked wing. Hey guys, how you doing over there? You still with us? Kim, Johnny, and Manny. Hello, guys. How you doing?
Good. Yeah, still awake.
Well,
I think you should have Kim demonstrate on Manny.
I don't know.
Why?
You want to punch
Why?
each other out?
Hey, I've been doing that all day.
So let's get into it, guys. You're talking about grip of death. Why don't you answer that, Kim?
Well, it's one of two techniques we're doing in the wrong side, plus the way we do it in the foam, you can't really do it.
Whoa. No wrong side. No wrong side.
Left side. Left side,
Left
sorry.
side.
Sorry.
Left side.
Sorry, left side. Oh,
Remember,
it's getting...
short form is one-sided, long form is two-sided. Both sides, right and left.
So continue on, Kim. We're giving you a reprieve.
Well, it's the two techniques on the left side. Hands are in front of the body, so you can't really do it. You have to do the technique because you have to go through him with one of the hand. It's also a dual strike. Yeah. What else can I say? Help me, Manny.
Exactly, Manny.
Why did it the left side? That's thing, food for thought.
Yeah.
Why do we do it the left side? Same thing with twirling wings. Why is it a left side technique? Why, if the rule on forms doing techniques is a strong side, which is right side, why those two are left sided? What's the reason?
Max, what's the answer?
Well, Manny asked the tough one, huh?
Yeah.
No, it was meant to be explained.
You better know that, Max.
I do.
On YouTube.
There's other parts, you know, I don't want to give it all out, but there's
Don't worry.
other moves in the form where we use, like, you know, destructive twins. You know, the inward-outward motion, you know, is not technically a block because you're not doing it against a weapon in motion. So it becomes a check. You know, it's a left vertical outward block position used as a check. So when we do twirling wings, you know, now we do it on the other side to use the right vertical outward as a check. You know what I mean? So they match up. Then when you're going to get to the next form, you're going to do blinding sacrifice, and you'll do them both at the same time on the inside. You know what I mean? So yes, you know, all the different ways we can do it, you know, check here, check there with one hand, check with the other, check with both. You know, gripping talon, the same thing. You know, use the hammer fist to the groin with the left in grip of death, because we use the hammer fist with the right in crashing wings. You know, so there's a lot of, you know, stuff that you look at it and you say, okay, one, he's leaning back on the 45, one, he's bent over on the 45, you know, so the line you're using is different as well, you know, but it's, you know, every move and every technique is there for a reason and it shows something, you know. I make my guys think all the time. I said, there's a short 3 and a long 3. And if something is in short 3, but not in long 3, why not? And what replaced it and why? You know what I mean?
Max, will you repeat your response or Jason?
Can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Okay, yes. Well, you know, Manny had asked, you know, there's 2 techniques that we do on the, you're not wrong, but the other side in short 3. And what the reason for that was, you know, and I just pointed out some of the reasons. Okay. You know, but, you know, you know, we got into it. You know, I said, there's moves in short 3 that don't make it to long 3. And if they're not there, what replaced them and why, you know, and, you know, to understand the relationship, you know, like fatal cross is not there. Right. Is one of the techniques, you know. So if it's not there, what took its place and why, you know, or circling wing is not there, you know, what took its place and why.
Interesting. Yes, I see that. And I understand what you're saying. As far as why they're not there, I guess I'm not quite completely sure. I, you know, wasn't obviously there to make the form up, but
well, I wasn't either. You know, I just,
yeah, right.
Let's go.
I'm sorry. Did somebody yell at me? Hello.
Why aren't they there?
Are you asking Max, asking Jason, or asking me? I'm sorry, I was at the ATM.
Sorry, I was asking Mr. Planas, but now that you're back,
apologies.
we'll let you go. Hey, we'll put the spotlight on you there, Mr. Rebelo.
Oh, no problem. What was the question that was being asked me? I was in the ATM. Sorry.
Okay, so there's moves.
Joe
One
just
more
nodded
time.
where you were going.
Joe, you're cracking me up, Joe.
Busting my cookies on my birthday? What the blue hell is that?
God,
Hey!
happy birthday, Joe. Happy birthday.
Here's the
Happy
deal. That's the
birthday.
only niceness we're going to say to you right now, Joe.
Okay.
We're going to
Sure.
have, why are there certain techniques in short 3 that are not in long 3? And Max brought that out.
And if they're not there, what replaced them?
Well, they weren't
Not replaced
replaced.
them,
It was the geometric shape that they utilized. So again, Mr. Parker left them out in order to make an even geometric pattern on each side, as opposed to, what do we call long 3? The return to horse form, right? You do it on the right side, step back to horse, do it on the left. Or you do it on the left side, step back to horse, do it on the right. That is the mainstay of the system. The geometric shape that he put for short 3 enables us to do our transitions from one technique into the next technique to keep us on a guided path or angle. However, certain ones fit better by reestablishing back to that horse stance and the move on those various angles. It's a star pattern, right? We've got a plus sign into a multiplication sign, plus sign, multiplication sign, and then we move forward along that center 12-6 line. So in the context of that, for the transition, and that's the key, the transition from one technique to another, it fit better in that particular format than it does in long 3, because what do? We just step back the horse, right? Everything from Destructive Twins on up. And since you mentioned that, I have a question. I'd like to talk about the hand isolation that's taught at the end of Destructive Twins with 1/4 of a circle versus 3/4 of a circle. I've seen several versions of it over the years as part of the tailoring process of the number 3 forms. But yeah, so what is your opinion on that, and what variations have you seen on the original format? And what do you consider the original format?
Well, who's that question directed to, Justin?
Anyone. Anyone who wants to answer it.
I'll give it to Dennis Conatser.
I don't have any. I don't know where he's at with quarter circle, half
I don't
circle.
either, Dennis. I don't either. He lost me.
The hand isolation. So we finish off Destructive Twins and we punch, and then the person grabs our wrist and we either fold for a collapsing elbow into a downward back knuckle on the radial nerve. Then we do a 3/4 shape of the crane hook and pull back and execute the horizontal thrust on long 3. So we're
I'm
taught
still lost. I'm still
Long
lost.
3. I'm
Oh, no,
sorry.
we're not. No, we're not talking long 3. We're doing short 3.
Okay, I was asking because I had a question on that. My apologies.
We have a question for
No,
you.
it didn't matter to me, Joe. I just didn't know where you're at.
Yeah, neither
Oh,
did
no problem.
the rest of
I kind of walked into the 3/4 through the movie, so you know.
Yeah, we'll go over that in the next session.
Okay.
Joe,
Remind me.
it's your
You
birthday.
bet.
We'll go easy on you, okay? We'll go easy on you.
You lie.
Walk us through. Joe, walk us
Okay,
through.
I don't want to lose my train of thought on this.
Okay,
Got
So
it.
I'm going to jump in here.
go ahead.
You're doing at 10:30, left-handed grip of death.
Yep.
Left-handed grip of death. Okay,
Yep.
not right-handed, but left-handed. And again, Max brought out if we have the right hammer fist to the groin and crashing wing, we have the left hammer fist to the groin, just like twirling wings, we do it left-handed because in the first technique, destructive turns, we have the left vertical outward as a check, and then we have the right vertical outwards as a check. Even though you're doing basics, you're still doing balance moves. I'm doing a right and a left or whatever. And when I pointed out in circling wing to crashing wings, you just inverted the stances. You went reverse, neutral, forward, and then you go forward, neutral, reverse. Now you do the same thing. But what are the stances really in circling wing?
Mr. Rebelo.
Forward, neutral, and reverse kneel. Reverse kneel, because you can't hit the groin or effectively and do that. See, so that's at 1:30. So I always tell people, compare your times in your corners or your 3/9, 6/12, and your 1:30, 7:30, 4:30, 10:30. So when you do left-handed grip of death, you invert the strike pattern again of your stances. You go kneel, neutral, forward, instead of forward, neutral, kneel, in reverse order. It's so simple if you just look at it.
Let's go on and move on to the last few techniques in short 3. And while we're on that, Jason, walk us through lock wing and cross twigs.
Once again, I set this up with my students that, once you get done doing the heel palm of grip of death, you wanted to start to walk away. The person grabs your arm and then you move into lock wing, loading up the arm, hit with a outward elbow, back elbow through the face, lock him up, step back, drop him down, lock him up, and then do the right heel palm to the right knee, drop, and then put the hands behind the back like you would with fatal cross, step forward once again, and then hit him with the right back elbow as you did with the left in locked wing. And continue the flow and circle with inward overhead elbow, twin heel palms with a left knee, and set to square horse. So you set up for the next technique.
Which is?
Wings of silk.
Ah, my favorite. I love this technique. I love this technique. What are you laughing for, Huck?
There was a. Did you see John Wayne movie North to Alaska? A woman, a really good-looking blonde. Her husband was in the movie. Ernie Kovacs, and his name was Silky in the movie. So that makes me think of that, Silky. So you might be starting. I might start calling you Silky.
I got to
so
tell
what
you,
it means is slick. It's slick. Silk is slick. So your arms slip out of his grab like silk, and that's where the name comes from. I did a seminar one time talking about the names of the techniques and where they came from. Because a lot of foreign countries and stuff that I go through, they don't speak English, and a lot of our terminology is slang. So like rod. What's a rod? Why is that? Well, that's an old 20s and 30s gangster term for a gun. That's why the rod is a gun. See? But a lot of people don't know that. We do, but they don't.
Okay, so wings of silk. Let's go to Lori. Sounds like a Lori question. Lori, walk us through wings of silk.
In the form, your arms are behind you, and you're going one up, one down with your stomp as you spin out, and you're gonna do the break.
Mr. Planas, you're shaking your head. Help us.
About what?
How did she do?
Well, like again, you know, a lot of moves are done for category completion. There's moves with chicken kicks in them and moves without chicken kicks in them. And I have the students do both. I said, do this with a chicken kick and without a chicken kick. So what's better? Well, I like it straight. Well, why? First of all, we got to teach you chicken kicks because that's a category completion. But then you learn what's wrong with a chicken kick. See, chicken kicks delay your major with a weak minor, and you don't gain the ground. When you understand that, you say you have the choice of doing a chicken kick or not. So some do, some don't. And so when you do this, that's what you're looking at. So again, that stomp to the foot and that heel up kills your takeoff. You don't do that in spiraling twig, and spiraling twig is just the other side of circling wings of self. See, so you don't do that. You just spin out, see, because you have a push foot, like running a race. I say, get down like you're gonna run a race, then pick up your back foot and start the race. I can't very good, how come? Because you lost your push off. See? So that's there again for category completion with the heel up and the elbow up, but you have to stay square to do that. You said, Lori said, as you spin out. I said, no, if you start spinning, you'll miss every time. You move 2 inches or an inch and you'll miss that elbow because it's out of alignment. The alignment requires the same alignment as obscure wing. You have to stay square for that shot to hit under the chin. If you start to rotate out, you're not going to make it. So my advice to people is, look, this is just for category completion. Do it, try it without that part and see what you get. And they say, oh, that's much better. I said, well, yeah. Yeah, but again, you have to analyze it and understand it, you know, like, and know why you did a move. That's with your hand-foot combinations. That's up and down to the rear. Then what's in the form? What's right after that? Conquering shield, which is the foot and elbow up to the front. So you did elbow, foot to the rear. Now elbow, foot to the front. Again, category completion move, and that's fine. But to the rear is not. Okay.
When you look at, we'll just leave the chicken kick to Danielson and Cobra Kai business. That seems to work for them in the movies. Let's go to the last technique, which we're going to cover, is striking serpent's head. And, you know, what an interesting name for a, geez, that was a nice little play on it. Did you like that? I must have hit a button. Let's go to Dennis Conatser. Dennis, we haven't heard from you. Let's hear what you have to say about striking serpent's head.
Well, for a front arms free bear hug. So you utilizing both your hands are free, so you step back, come with a inverted back knuckle strike, grab the hair, eye or nose under the chin, pull back and half fist to the throat.
I've heard some people actually try to use this technique for an attack. Somebody's trying to attack you with a tackle, you know, and I'm wrong on that, but Max, what is that? What's that all about? I don't understand that one.
Bear hug, arms free, like you said. You know what I mean? It's the technique uses, you know, another technique we have from the rear, which is locked wing in the form.
Mm-hmm. And
you're inside both. You know, one that's a bear hug. You know, tripping arrow. You know, is another technique that we have. It's not, neither one is a tackle. You know what I mean? If you were if he was tackling you, you'd be on your butt. You know what I mean? You know, this is a bear hug, and it's a base pivot technique. You know, locked wing is done for a push. Here you're doing it for a pull. You know, your first strike. Locked wing, you get a base pivot, and the elbow is the push. Here you're doing the same thing, and the strike is the pulling line. You know, this is the left hand. Then in the other form, we'll do the right hand, and then we'll do both hands as well. You know, in other places and other forms. But, you know, it's a base pivot, you know, from a bear hug, you know, so you can have you know, you establish a base, and then you're stepping back. This is the same thing as another, you know, long kimono, same mechanics as well, but instead of a push, like I said, you do a pull. Matches as well, many things in the form. You know, if you take a look at the last technique in short two, you know, we use a pushing line to hold the line open for a half fist. Here we do a pull to open the line for the half fist. You know, so instead of pushing from the front, we pull from the rear. Also another reason for doing grip of death on the, wrong or other side is that there you did the fulcrum with the left hand. Here you're doing it with the right hand, and you're using a substitute weapon instead of a heel palm. You're doing a half fist. So that technique picks up a lot of relationships throughout the forms and other techniques as well.
Thank you, Max. Appreciate the nice thing about your involvement today, the way you compared and contrast and cross-reference things. It's beautiful. Thank you. I got to tell you,
beat into me for 25 years.
It's nice to have it being said and shared here. The complexity of this simple form is way past what most people really understand.
True.
And it's nice to have this discussion. Boy, I hate to say it, this could be open up for days.
Paul,
Yes, sir.
Paul, I want to add one thing to striking serpent's head. Let me get rid of my cat here. Get down, cat. A lot of people leave it out, but when you did conquering shield, the last move was your heel palm claw to the eyes and the face on your opponent.
Yeah.
That's got to stay. That prevents the headbutt. So that's the man that's getting you in the bear hug, is the man you did conquering shield on. So he just stepped in, wraps his arms around you, and he might be trying to headbutt you. So you said, no, you're not going to headbutt me. So you're leaving your right hand in his face, pushing the head back. So we say brace from the front, hit from the back, and then brace from the back and hit from the front. But a lot of people leave that move out. See, and again, back in for category completion, just to make it, that's the last move in the form, striking serpent's head, which is done with the left hooking back knuckle, or whatever you want to call it. The next form, or in the forms, is 4. How does that end? Stepping forward with the right hooking back knuckle. It just, everything is category completion, but you do both sides, and there's much more to it that involves in that. But we'll get there when the time comes.
So I want to say thank you to everybody here. You guys did an amazing job. I truly appreciate everybody's involvement, especially all the people that are here today. Paul Casey, on behalf of the Kenpo Karate Hall of Fame educational video series. So with that in mind, I would like to close out and just say thank you to Richard Planas, Jason Farnsworth, Joe Rebelo, Lori Hyde up in Canada. Thank you, dear. Our friends Kim, Johnny, and Maddie. Max, thank you so much, Max. That was
pleasure
hearing you. Conatser, thank you for your input. Tony, appreciate you could be here. Joe Rebelo, birthday boy himself, thank you for coming up. Bob White,
happy birthday.
Sullivan, everybody on behalf of the Kenpo Karate Hall of Fame, thank you very much. Have a great night. We will talk again soon. God bless you.